Creek Cassana Independent School District Board of Trustees will now come to order. Before we get started, I'd like to read our vision and core values. Goose Creek develops and enhances each learner's intellectual, social, and emotional well-being, facilitated by a highly qualified team committed to growth, community, collaboration, innovation, success, and determination. We empower every student with the knowledge and skills they need to succeed in a global community. Our core values, which spell out was an acronym for GCCISD, is graduate every child, children first in a safe and nurturing educational environment, collaborative community and parental involvement, integrity, respect, humility, and transparency, service before self, and diversity respected. Dr. Duarte. I'm sorry. Mr. Poppy, is there a quorum present?
Yes.
And was the meeting properly posted?
It was.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
President Laredo, school board members, Dr. O'Brien, we will begin the opening ceremonies with the prayer led by Jessica Woods. Everyone, please rise.
Please bow your head and pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for your guidance and wisdom. Bless this meeting and all those present tonight, and give us the strength and courage and the direction to make decisions and face the challenges before us. Place your mantle of protection over this community and our district and our students as they enjoy their summer off, and come into our hearts and minds so that we may better serve your will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
The pledges will be led by Shay Cotter.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On honor of the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
You may be seated. For our recognitions tonight, I'd like to ask Dr. Tom Kelchner, our former Special Education Director, to share the partnership with ExxonMobil and the donation they have provided to support the Learning Blade STEM program.
Thank you, Dr. Duarte. It is such a pleasure, Mr. President, Board Trustees, Mr. Superintendent, and as I said, a great pleasure to return to Goose Creek tonight with friends, colleagues, all around the room. I'm very, very pleased and proud that my company, Empowered Learning Environments, has partnered with Learning Blade. Learning Blade is a very well-founded STEM program. That program introduces junior and higher level elementary grade students to various STEM careers and technologies by introducing over 100 careers and technologies and 12 missions. That includes over 100 hours of curriculum and over 400 different interactive and interdisciplinary lessons and activities. Learning Blade is a group that is growing. We are statewide in Tennessee and Arkansas, and I'm again honored that I've been asked to partner with this group to help bring this into our state at a higher level. I want to thank first and foremost Mike Aston, who is in Dallas tonight with Exxon. Mike is the Government Affairs Manager from Exxon. I first approached him because of the need for STEM programs, and not for all students, but certainly also to improve STEM education programs for minority youngsters as well as young ladies. And he is working with Exxon to help us move that forward. I want to thank Dr. O'Brien, Dr. Duarte, and Ms. Dillon for their support as they vetted the program with their teams. In the final analysis, ExxonMobil has agreed to underwrite the cost of the program with a donation of $7,500. What is significant about this is that we were able, with our CEO, Sheila Boyington of Learning Blade, offer to Goose Creek an extremely special deal. Goose Creek is still in my heart and mind. And this donation will enable Learning Blade to be deployed to every school in the district over time based on administration's rollout plan. along with the training. So this is a tremendous opportunity for Exxon and Goose Creek and Learning Blade to partner, and with our ultimate intent to make Goose Creek a standard bearer for STEM education nationally. Thank you so very much.
Dr. Kelchner, we want to say thank you, obviously, to ExxonMobil for their generous donation, but also thank you to you for bringing forth this product. Thank you.
Okay, next we go to public hearing.
We have Renee Woodruff and Margie Grimes with us this evening to present.
It's a little light green. No, you have to push the
Press
button.
the button. There.
Okay, is this better? We just want to open up a public hearing. For any comments, we'd like to present a little bit of information. I'm going to turn that over to Renee Woodruff, and she can review with you and the public some of the items that are included in the budget proposal for 1920.
Good evening, President Laredo, board members, and Dr. O'Brien. This presentation will be a brief overview of the district's 2019-2020 proposed budget. I'm only going to cover the highlights this evening. Here are our planning assumptions. All of the planning assumptions are the same as what we presented in the last budget workshop, with the exception of salary increases. And the salary increases will be discussed in a later agenda. As just a reminder that the proposed budget is based on current law, we will be reposting our tax rate notice and amending the 2019-20 budget once we work through the details of the House Bill 3 as it relates to the pay incentives, state revenues, and allotments for the other programs. Here we have our enrollment growth. The graph shows the 1% enrollment growth from 23,710 to 23,947 projected for the 2019-20 school year. This results in a total growth of 4% over 5 years. The certified preliminary taxable values for M&O are 11.1 billion, same as last year, and INS taxable values of 15.1 billion, up 1.1 billion, just an 8% increase. Okay, the compensation plan will be presented as a separate agenda item, so that will be discussed later. Okay, this is general fund proposed budget. Total revenue is projected at $233.1 million, which is up $9.5 million from the prior year's adopted budget of $223.6 million. Total expenditures for the general fund of $233 million, which is up $13 million from the prior year's budget. There will be a decrease in the operating transfer to the debt service fund of $1.5 million. And finally, we are projecting a $95.9 million balance for the general fund, which represents about 41%, 5 months of annual operating expenditures. 41%. Here we have the general fund budget by function. Since the budget is adopted at the function level, we provided a percentage breakdown of the various budget functions. Instruction and related services, 59.9%. Instructional and school leadership, 8.4%. Student support services at 11.5%. Administrative and support services, 3.7%. Non-student support services, 15.1%. And that leaves a total of 1.4% for all other functions. Here we have the debt service fund. The total revenue is projected at $48.6 million, which is up $12.8 million from the prior year's adopted budget of $35.8 million. This increase in revenue is due to the tax revenue collections generated from the increase for the new bonded debt payments. Total expenditures have increased by $7.6 million from the prior year due to the debt payment for the 2019 bonds. As mentioned earlier, the $1.5 million operating transfer in the general fund budgeted last year is no longer needed. The projected fund balance will be $32.9 million, which includes amounts of $18.5 million restricted for the August 15th payments and QZAB sinking fund, and $14.4 million for the annual debt payments. Here we have the school nutrition fund. The revenues projected of $15.4 million is $1.8 million higher than last year, primarily due to the increase in the reimbursement rate for breakfast and lunch programs, as well as the catering. Total expenditures of $14.5 is approximately the same as last year. The 2019-20 budget proposals include requests for approval of an additional $600,000 committed for the GCCISD Education Service Center kitchen project. This will bring the total committed fund balance to $1.7 million and leaves $2.8 million reserved for food service reparations. It's 2.4 months or 20% of operating expenditures. This slide shows all legally adopted funds by function. There's a total revenue of $297 million and total expenditures of $292 million. Okay. Here we have the capital improvement fund. As discussed in the previous workshop, it is a 5-year plan that we have proposed to begin in the 2019-20 year. There were only a few minor changes since it was presented to you at the budget workshop. And then here, I didn't have anything to say.
This is information we presented previously on carry forward of unused departmental budget allotments. This would be sort of like a first year sort of, test it, see if it works, see if it was well received by the departments, particularly maintenance, where they have summer projects and some needs to carry some of those unspent funds over. And we would come back to you along with the encumbrances and appropriate those funds going forward. So this is sort of meant to be sort of like a trial or test year, and we may consider this going forward, but we wanted it documented so you would know what it was when we bring it back to get your approval to see if you would want to carry those funds forward. And with that concludes the information we have, and I guess we'll take any questions that anyone has.
Point out the public can speak now too.
Right. I think the board needs to wait till it's an agenda item. So right now, the public forum is for the public. It's redundant, but I think the board waits till it becomes an item on the agenda when it comes up.
I will mention that we have listed the compensation and adoption of the teacher salaries new hire schedule as a separate item, and we want to make the point that we've included an estimate in the budget to cover whatever plan the board shall adopt. The estimated cost has been estimated at $10 million. Once we have the details worked out and all of the compensation adjustments, we feel like that's going to be plus or minus within $500,000 or so dollars. Maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. We'll bring those back once we have a full accounting of all the details of the pay plans. And but we just wanted to know that we feel like the budget's ready for adoption with that estimate. We're going to have to bring forward a budget amendment anyway as we work out House Bill 3. So.
Okay, if anybody from the public would like to give comment.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay. Hereby close this hearing at 6:46 p.m. Let's see. Next, we have citizens' participation. Citizens' participation is the time when the board will hear any public concerns or public comments from those who have signed up to address the board. Each speaker is reminded that he or she is limited to a presentation of 3 minutes, and that he or she should not identify teachers, administrators, staff, or students by name in addressing concern or comments. Pursuant to state law and board policy, be illegal, the board cannot consider or take action on concerns at this meeting unless they pertain to an item posted on the posted agenda for the meeting. Any deliberation or decision on an item that is not posted for consideration at this meeting shall be limited to a proposal to place a subject on the agenda for a future meeting. We have one citizen today, Ms. Kim Kostek. Ms. Kostek, Mr. Poppy will give you a 1-minute warning.
Sounds great. Howdy. All right. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. O'Brien. I would formally like to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude for recognizing the magnitude of the bullying epidemic and your willingness to improve our procedures and resources within our district. 11 days ago, SB 11 was signed into order, and it includes requirements to develop programs and committees to address the many aspects of mental health and bullying within a district. I can only assume we will now be at the forefront of this within our district. I have had the opportunity to develop a friendship with Maureen Molick. You may know her as David's mom from David's Law. We have had the opportunity to discuss statistics that the legislature uses to pass and strengthen our laws, although statistics show conservatively that 70% of children between grades 4th through 8th will have fallen victim to a bully at some point. Oh, sorry. The CDC's Youth Risk Behavioral Survey in 2017 alone showed that on average 19% of high schoolers experienced bullying in the previous 12 months. This number is high as 23% of 9th graders, trending down to 14% 12th graders. The more alarming statistics are those that address the feelings of hopelessness almost every day, 34%, and seriously considered suicide, 18%. Please put those numbers mathematically within our district. Let's be conservative and say we have 6,500 high schoolers. That would be well over 1,000 high schoolers in our district that were victims of bullying in 2017. Remember, the numbers trend down, so let's say it was the same conservatively for junior high. That would be an additional 950 more students, a total of over 2,100 students within our district, conservatively, between grades 6 through 12 in a single year.
You have 1 minute remaining.
So that was boring, and I had the opportunity to review the presentation tonight, and our data concerns me. I have a few questions I would like to be asked. How accurate is our information? What grade levels and campuses were our 18 substantiated cases within our district? How was this information received? Was much of it reported online versus in person? How accurate is our reporting online? And are we meeting within the 3-day guidelines? Is the bullying checklist from the Texas School Safety Center being followed to identify bullying as required? And were the cases considered unsubstantiated, were they followed up with? When you plug our numbers into the CDC statistics, are we an anomaly? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Costa. Next, we have discussion items. Mr. O'Brien, Dr. O'Brien.
Yeah, we have our superintendent's report this evening is an overview of bullying. Ms. Araceli de la Cruz will be presenting. Our Director of Student Services. Good evening, ma'am.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone's doing well this evening.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so tonight we're going to discuss bullying prevention for Goose Creek CCISD. As you're well aware, and has been mentioned previously, the last legislative session, Senate Bill 179 was proposed, and it was named after David, the young man in San Antonio that unfortunately did take his own life. The definition was changed to include a significant single act. The definition is incredibly important. If you'll notice, I'm not going to read all of it to y'all because I know you guys all know how to read. But it is about an imbalance of power, whether that involves in written or verbal expression. There was quite a bit added about cyberbullying. and whether or not those actions have the impact to physically harm, for a student to physically harm themselves or damage a student's property. Is the action in question sufficiently severe, persistent, and pervasive enough that the action creates an intimidating, threatening, or abusive educational environment? The ability of that single or persistent action, does it substantially disrupt the educational process or the orderly operation of the classroom and the school, and does it infringe or violate on any of the students' rights? It's very wordy. Like I said, I did not read it word for word, but in essence, it's about the act or acts and how they substantially impact a child's ability to successfully function in an educational setting. Where the bullying occurs, one of the things that did change is now school districts do have the ability to address and initiate cyberbullying that may not be caused during the instructional day or with instructional resources like school district iPads. In the past, it was just information that happened at school district events or on a campus. Now, if there's any kind of bullying that occurs, for example, through social media, if that information is brought to the campus, not only the information, but also evidence of the pictures. And social media, I don't know how many of you have Snapchat or Instagram or Kik. There's a bunch of apps out there that kids are well versed in. And unfortunately, sometimes as soon as you post it, it's gone in a snap. So it's incredibly difficult to investigate. That's why we always encourage parents to share those images with us as soon as it happens. But we do have the ability to address incidents that happen that may not have happened on school district time or with school district resources. The reporting that we have available is anonymous through online, and we get those probably once every 2 weeks. Our office gets it and sends it out to the campus and then follows up with the campus on what action was taken and was it really a bullying incident. Parents and students can report these incidents through PA3, which is with partnership with Crime Stoppers. This year, Crime Stoppers came in. We delivered billboards to all the secondary campuses and one to each elementary. What we also did is wrapped the lunch tables with kind of like a plastic material to where that information was available to the students all day, every day if they went into the cafeteria. And then I've received bullying complaints. If a parent is not comfortable going to the campus, they can come through our office and we'll send that information out to the individual campuses. One of the things that was significant in Senate Bill 179 was the roles that each individual was to play as part of the investigative process and counseling process. It was very specific about the counselor's role and their duties to remain impartial. They're not reporting, they're not communicating the incident in question necessarily to the police officers or anything like that. That's the campus administrative's role and responsibility. Now, if they suspect some kind of child abuse, then absolutely they're required to report to CPS like they would with any other incident. But they're more as the supportive role to help both the alleged victim and the aggressor. The campus administrator, the principal, assistant principal, they're the ones that will take the charge. They're required by law to investigate any of the allegations. They're also required to communicate with the targeted student's parent or guardian before the third business day after the incident's reported. The aggressor's family, parent, or guardian must be notified within a significant time. It does not, in the bill, address that time period. It just they have to be notified within a reasonable time. It does allow for expulsion or a DAP if the student is engaging in bullying that encourages suicide, incites violence through group bullying, or releases or threatens to release intimate visual material of a minor or adult student without consent. As required in Texas Education Code Chapter 37, the campus administrators must take these things into account, whether or not the intent was there to bully. Does the child behaving in a certain manner have the cognitive ability to know the difference between right and wrong. The discipline history. Is this a first-time incident? Is this something that has happened in this child's past as far as an act that he's committed before? And was the child acting in self-defense? And so anytime a student is issued a disciplinary consequence, the campus administrator must take those things into consideration. Law enforcement's role is if a bullying investigation is completed by a campus administrator, they're the ones that do all the investigating, the principal may report to law enforcement if the principal has reasonable grounds to believe that a student has engaged in assault or harassment. It provides the definition of harassment. Now know that that definition could fall under several offenses. Okay? If you look at the definition of harassment, sending repeated e-communications in a manner likely to harass, annoy, alarm, abuse, torment, embarrass, or offend another. Also, you've had incidents where that same definition and those same acts have been taken as a stalking charge by the Harris County Department District Attorney's Office. And that carries a much heavier consequence as far as the penal code versus bullying. Criminal penalties have been enhanced for harassments by e-communication that is done with the intent for the student to hurt themselves or engage in conduct causing serious bodily injury. Reporting can be delegated by the principal to the campus assistant principal, but that reporting and investigating cannot be delegated to the counselor. The bullying data, we had 122 investigations that were conducted by campus administrators. We had 18 that were confirmed bullying cases and 104 that were deemed not to have the elements of bullying. Now, there will be instances where bullying is alleged. I'll give you an example. If student A says, okay, student B grabbed me by my neck. Well, that's assault, and that becomes a mandatory placement versus an act of bullying. That's going to the assault is going to require, let's go ahead and notify law enforcement, and that's a required DAEP placement, okay? And so that would be an assault versus a bullying. Like I said, there's some acts that weigh a lot heavier in the penal code and disciplinary action-wise and more accurately define assault or harassment or stalking.
So in that case, it wasn't disqualified because it didn't meet the standard of bullying. Correct. It was disqualified because it was more than bullying.
It was something a lot more severe. Okay. As I described earlier in the definition of harassment, that act of constant texting, of constant communication on social media, the Harris County District Attorney's Office deemed that act as stalking, and that's the charges that were taken, and that makes the victim eligible for services through the Attorney General's Office versus coding bullying and the student not getting the victim getting the support they need that's available for victims. And so we're not allowed to code one incident, two different things.
Okay, but really quick, you were just talking about coding them two different things, right, or the resources that are available to the victims. How are the resources different for students who are victims of bullying as opposed to victims of assault?
The state does not have resources.
Well, I'm talking about at GCCISD.
Oh, for GCCISD, when it comes to
what do we do for the victims of assault versus the victims of bullying?
When you're a victim of assault, you're automatically allowed to transfer to another campus, and that's under the Texas Education guidelines. If you're assaulted, you'll receive counseling both from the counseling department on campus. A safety plan needs to be created, and they can. If your family needs referral services for additional counseling outside of the school day, then they'll identify the resources for you.
And that's for victims of assault?
That's for any victim that needs any kind of counseling.
So the resources basically are the same for the victims, whether it's a
for
victim of bullying or a victim of assault? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. For GCCISD, yes.
I have a question. It seemed like you were differentiating between bullying or something else like assault. But oftentimes bullying and assault are an overlapping thing, not an either or. So if we're discounting those bullying incidences, are we then skewing the data? Because those are still bullying.
Right, and so the campus administrators are tasked with the responsibility of identifying the correct action that is taken as far as if it's, like you said, assault. Is it an assault or is it more so a bullying incident? The system that we have for our PEEMS data standards, we are not allowed to code one incident under two different offenses.
Can we change that?
We could if we petitioned the Texas Education Agency, because those PEEM codes are given to us by TEA. That's not something that we create. Even for our local discipline codes, when we submit them into our PEEMS data information, anything that's created locally automatically transfers into what's called a violation student code of conduct, and that's a code 21. So that covers everything locally, like theft, is local, chewing gum is local, things like that. Assault is a data standard identified by TEA. That's a numeric code that we use. That's how the state, as well as the Department of Education, tracks that information. Know that we do report bullying information to both TEA as well as the Department of Education every 2 years.
So basically, a child who on one day squirts glue in a kid's eye, the next day pulls her hair, the next day steals all of her little makeup out of her purse or whatever, that's not considered bullying because that's theft, assault, etc.
I would not be able to tell you in great detail, yes, this defines bully or not without having additional information.
But if you have a pattern of actions from, you say, one child to another, if they cross the line of assault or theft or whatever the, so you would not be able to call that a bullying. So that's why we only have 18 confirmed cases of bullying out of 122 investigations, because maybe 104 of them aren't considered bullying because they included theft or assault.
That is correct.
But yet theft and assault and those are under the definition up here of David's Law considered evidences of bullying when taken into the context of a repeated pattern.
If a campus administrator, ideally, if they had an assault that occurred on one day, I would hope the child would not be sitting next to the victim.
Well, that happens every day.
And so
that happens every day.
Every day, all day. But to generalize to any incident, whether it's assault or name calling or anything else, we're required by law to take those 4 things into consideration. Like I said, the cognitive ability, the discipline history. And so anytime we're giving a discipline or investigating a disciplinary infraction that may have occurred, we have to look at all the details, at all the information that we have. So for me to say every time a kid gets hit, it's going to be bullying, that would not be accurate.
And I get that. I understand that. I mean, you can have a fight one day and never anything the rest of the year. But you're talking, but here we are, and it's semantics. But if it's interfering with a student's educational opportunity because it's a continual pattern, and when you're looking at the student and you see a history of, well, they've stolen from, other students, or they've attacked students on different occasions, or they have a history of this, then there is a discipline history. So are we then moving them away from the criminal into the bullying category if we see an overall? Why would we do that if the punishment was more severe for the isolated incidences?
Anytime we have a student that starts exhibiting undesired behavior, then the campus administrators are tasked with the responsibility to provide an intervention. We're required by law to provide behavior intervention. So as soon as that undesired behavior is starting to be displayed consistently, the student support team will meet on the child and create a behavior plan. If it's appropriate, through a general education setting, if they need to go through a 504 committee, or if they need to go through an IEP committee. The interventions are required before we say, okay, well, let's move, deem this child any given label. We have to have documentation of the
So bullying is considered a label that we're placing on a child once they've exhibited all of these?
Well, ideally, we don't label any kids, but the behavior is bully-like. The behavior being displayed can be bully-ish.
I guess and so I have a question for you that the responsibility of reporting bullying is on the campus administrator, but yet students are most likely going to report their instances to a teacher or a counselor, and so that person then would have, first contact. Do they just immediately turn it over to the principal? Here, you handle this. This kid says they're being bullied.
Okay, so the assistant principals investigate. There's 2 or 3, 4, 5.
But are they investigating the student who has the allegations against them, or the student who is alleging?
They investigate the incident in question.
Okay.
And so if the investigation information they get from the teacher is saying student A is name calling student B, then their responsibility is to go ahead and identify all the kids involved. Let's go ahead and bring them in, start getting written statements. If they don't have the cognitive ability to write a written statement, what elementary administrators are trained to do is they do it in pairs, because a lot of times we'll have, a first grader or a kindergartner that may not be able to write a full statement. We do it in pairs for the younger kids, but they identify everybody involved, get statements from everyone involved, notify the parents of what's being investigated. If there's anything on social media, if there's anything other data they need to look at or other evidence they need to look at, and they gather as much information as possible before identifying what the undesired behavior is going to be coded in the system. But the first step is to identify everybody that's involved, contact their parents, get written statements, because once you start contacting parents, the statements change.
Ms. De La Cruz, I have a couple of questions. So I'm kind of understanding, my only problem with this is we're in a very data-driven society. And the bottom line is what does the data say? And if the data doesn't say bullying, and oftentimes, many times, the aggressor or the bully and the person who's getting bullied are in the same pattern of schools. And if I have a new principal, a new AP, a new teacher, all of a sudden that person, because back here they were in a fight or whatever, it's an assault, there's no establishment of pattern. I think that's what Ms. Woods was trying to, there's no way, according to the way that you're coding, and I understand that you're bound by law, by TA, but there's no establishment of pattern to what the child being bullied can fall back, because they're saying, well, no, I was bullied. Well, no, it doesn't say you were bullied here according to our data. So, and maybe, tomorrow, we hope you're here for a while, but maybe tomorrow you're not here, or maybe a principal's not here, or whatever. There's a change in staff where there's that wasn't exhibited, definitely with teachers, as they change from year to year. That's one. Number two, I heard you say earlier that if a child is victimized by assault or by bullying, the victim in GCCISD has the option of leaving schools. What about the child that did the assault or did the bullying? Why isn't that child why is the child that was the victim given the burden of having to leave schools versus the child that did, and I know we're dealing with children, but versus the child that committed the act, because they get to stay with their friends, whatever. Meanwhile, the child that was victimized is having to go to and sometimes that may be what they want.
Punishing the victim.
Yeah. Right, yeah, it feels like a little bit, and I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying in general what our policy is, we are punishing the victim in that case. Okay. And that's really what I hear a lot of concerns when the parents have called me throughout my
And we get
tenure.
those calls too.
I'm glad that we share that. Whenever the calls that I've gotten have been that sometimes it's why does my kid have to move? My kid didn't do anything. My kid's being punished, and I can see that. I think everybody here was victimized of bullying at one point in their life. It's part of growing up, right? But I think that when it affects children to the point where they are not able to function as children because they're scared to go to school, and I think it becomes an issue, and even more when things such as data prevents our kids from feeling comfort, because now the burden's on the victim. And I know none of the people at Goose Creek do this, but sometimes that stuff gets buried in paperwork and in 360 and in this because it's reported different ways.
And I'll tell you that for Review 360, I'm glad I couldn't have asked you to ask better questions. In Review 360, even though it's an unsubstantiated case, it still has that information in Review 360. So if I'm a campus administrator and I'm investigating an allegation between student A and student B, and I deem it not to be a bullying incident, that information remains in Review 360. So the next year, if there's a question or concern, I still have that data available to me that, you know what, last September, there was an investigation held, and the campus administrator did not deem it bullying, but I have my targeted victim, and then I have the aggressor. That information does roll over in Review 360. So even if it's deemed bullying or not, it still identifies who the targeted victim is. Now, for the individuals that get behavior support, counseling support, that information is also housed in addition to Review 360 in Eduphoria under the counseling folder, depending on what information that individual or support services that individual has received. Now, for 504 students and special education students, that information is also available in their audit folders. And they're required to meet every year or anytime that there's a concern regarding those students. So there's multiple areas where that information is housed, where a campus administrator, a counselor, anyone that's dealing with the child, whether it be the victim or the aggressor, could see that information. Hey, wait a minute, there's been allegations since the child was in 6th grade between these two kids, and this is the behavior that we're seeing. So that information is always available, whether it's in Eduphoria, Review 360, or that child's individual audit folders. Now, the second question was, you said that my response was GCCISD or our pattern. Texas Education Agency states that when a child is a victim of an assault, whether that's aggravated or sexual assault, that the victim has the right to transfer. That is not individual to GCCISD. That's something that we're required to do by TEA to offer that victim a transfer. Do I agree with it? Absolutely not. Do I think that it's fair as a mother of a child who was bullied? Absolutely not. But nonetheless, we're still required to have a victim letter available for those families and that student should they choose to. Do they have to? Absolutely not. Is it going to take the place of a consequence for the aggressor? Absolutely not. But that's a step that we're required to do with Texas Education.
I understand that. But what about the bully?
The bully will get, once again, if that
Or
letter
aggressor.
or that option will not take the place of a consequence that's issued to the bully. But remember, discipline has to be in steps. If it's something as severe as an assault, we're not required to do, let's do, a detention, an ISS. If it's an assault, the child has to go. The child has to go. If it's name calling, then we may need to issue an appropriate consequence. But the way our student code of conduct is set up, it's progressive in that, okay, we have an offense, a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, a level 4. And so that's why you have the specific behavior that's described. And the campus administrators, they get the training. We go through this every year, and we'll talk about that a little bit more on where the campus administrators, parents, and students are getting this information. We want everyone, anytime there's a question or concern, even if you're not sure if it's bullying, please let somebody know, whether it's myself, a counselor, an administrator. There's multiple areas to report. We try to get as much information out to parents as possible. At the parent fair, we have anywhere about 300, 350 parents come through our front door. When we do registration, we service right at 300 parents for summer registration. And information is always available about cyberbullying, about how to report it. We have our campaign with Crime Stoppers. Students have access to information through Oliveas, fish and tadpole camps, as well as transitioning camps. Once again, even if as a parent or as a community member, as board members, anytime that there's a question or concern, please let us know, let the campus know, let me know, Dr. O'Brien, anyone, anytime that a child is feeling concerned or uneven or uneasy about anything that happens, our responsibility is to address the concerns of the taxpayers of GCCISD. I would love to clone myself and be at all the campuses.
But you have counselors at all the campuses. Why aren't the counselors more involved in the process? I realize that they are conciliatory, that they, it's supposed to be objective and deal with both students on both sides of the issue. But it's not like you're going to have both kids in, I mean, you can have both kids in there at the same time and counsel with them, but you have, say, a victim in a situation. Why is that child not, why are we not having more campus level discussions with these students about bullying
Yeah.
and how to combat it, how to get over it, how to, come back from it. I mean, it seems like it can't all come from a discipline issue. It can't all come from disciplinary department. This sounds more to me like something instructional from a counselor. And I know we have, keystone words, and we're talking to them constantly about building character and how.
What you're saying is music to my ears, and I'll tell you why. Because every August, we have a training with campus administrators, counselors, student support administrators, the campus level administrators, the counselors. We all get in one room to make sure that what the assistant principal is hearing is the same thing that the counselor is hearing, is the same thing that the student support administrator is hearing, to make sure that they all have an active role in addressing any kinds of these concerns. And you're absolutely right, and that we can't just look at it as, oh, it's just one individual incident. If you look at number 2, it's everybody's responsibility, from the secretary at the front desk to the custodian to the teachers, to create a positive environment. And what we're working very closely with Region 4 to make sure that that is not only a campus-wide expectation, but a district-wide expectation, that everyone works very hard to create a positive environment that kids feel safe in, that their parents feel welcomed at, and that's done through our PBIS process, as well as character education.
What is a PBIS?
Positive Behavior Intervention System.
Positive behavior. Okay,
We're very, very fortunate to have worked with Region 4 for the last 3 years to identify and work with campuses on the implementation of PBIS, because it's about the environment, it's about the relationship that our staff has with kids, not only so kids will feel comfortable in reporting, but to make sure that those aggressors know that that behavior is not acceptable and will not be tolerated. And as soon as something that's questioning or concerning, that everyone on that campus feels comfortable enough to address that behavior and also report it immediately. But it is a systematic approach. It cannot be just, let's address bullying. It has to do with the overall character education and the implementation of a positive environment at the campus level.
Can I go back to a slide real quick? Because I don't want to lose sight of this, that bullying data slide.
The 122 investigations.
Right. I mean, according to both TASB and the CDC, which I'm assuming TASB got their numbers from the CDC, I think it was 1 in 5 students are subject to bullying, and when you include the definition of cyberbullying, that turns to 1 in 3. If we've got a campus of roughly 23,000 students, 18 doesn't even come close. So I don't know if the crux of the issue with this data is what we're doing with the bullies or what we're doing with the victims. To me, the crux of this data says that the data is really skewed somehow. We've got to get a better idea of what's actually happening, and we won't know that until we actually have a report that shows we're probably pretty normal.
One of the things that I would like to see in reviewing that data, the students that responded to a survey or wherever their sources are for gathering that data, out of all those students that responded, I'm curious to see how many of them actually reported it to their district administrator or their assistant principal, to see, so we could compare apples to apples and see, okay, are the students who are responding to being victims of bullying, are they actively reporting it to their campuses? Where are they actively reporting it to? So that's why I'd like to see the sources quoted in that survey, where that information came from, what they used to gather that information, to be able to see, okay, is it coming based from other school districts' team data, or is it coming from the students just sharing that with individuals. I'd like to see exactly, where those percentages are coming from to be able to get a bigger picture of, are we comparable to what other school districts in our area are reporting, or are kids just not reporting it to the school administrators? But without seeing that report in greater detail, I wouldn't be able to tell you with great confidence, yeah, we're skewed, no, we're not, because I don't know the source of that data.
I would venture to guess that a student's version of reporting a bullying incident and an administrator's version of reporting an incident are two totally different things.
I would agree.
I would think that a student telling a teacher that something was happening and it go no further than that probably happens a whole lot more than we can even imagine. Because there seems to be this attitude that, well, it'll be okay, you'll get over it, just ignore them. When one attempt by a student might be the only attempt they ever make.
Right.
And the fact that student even took the time to say something to an adult, period, should have been significant. And I'm afraid that's probably where we are.
If I can tag on to that. As a teacher, I knew that if a kid came up to me and says, Mom beat me with a hanger last night, I instantly report it.
Without passing
fail,
judgment on it.
Yeah, without fail, even if I don't believe you, that I'm reporting it. What about the kid that says Johnny's bullying me as he comes into my classroom? What is my obligation as a teacher at that point?
What we've trained the teachers through our Safe Schools software is what bullying and what bullying is not. One of the things that Ms. Woods mentioned is the misconception of, let's get both kids in the same room. If you remember the definition, bullying is about an imbalance of power. So the first thing that we're making sure that teachers know is that the definition of what bullying is. What does it look like? How do we report it? That notion of, oh, we just all got bullied when we were growing up, that's not appropriate. When kids are bullied, sometimes they tell, sometimes they don't. But every incident that's reported, the teacher's responsibility is to make sure that campus administrator is aware of it. And
But what is the teacher's obligation to do that? What Goose Creek law? What CPS law? We have laws about reporting child abuse. What requires the teacher to go to the administrator and says, Johnny reported bullying today?
The educator code of conduct, that anytime a student comes to a teacher with a concern that says, hey, I'm being bullied, that Texas educator code of conduct that teacher signs and adheres to will guide them.
That's in the code.
It is not in Senate Bill 179. If I'm not mistaken, it's in the GCCISD Texas Educator Code.
Okay, so it is in there.
That they report anytime that a student comes to them with a question or concern, and that they adhere to our process and expectations.
And about how long has it been there?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. I'd have to go back and look it up, and I can get that information.
And is it specifically if a student comes to the teacher, or what if a teacher overhears an incident?
If you go to FFI local, it states that an employee report any district employee who suspects or receives notice that a student or group of students has or may have experienced bullying shall immediately notify the principal or designee. So it's in our local policy that they have to immediately report.
I think that part of the problem may be that, for example, as a teacher, by law, I have to be giving something that says, hey, if a kid comes in and says, hey, I got beat last night, you have to call CPS. Your permit will be pulled. If you don't, you have 24 hours, whatever.
Right.
I think what maybe would be prudent to do is to maybe do the same thing. Obviously, the consequence is different, but maybe the procedure that we as a school district to be proactive at the beginning when you get the plethora of sign-off sheets and videos, maybe create one. Maybe your office, or I don't know whose office.
Dr. Remick and I work very closely.
We could create something that a teacher, just like when we see, I remember that CPS presentation every year, and I remember the other ones that I had to watch, that our teachers be reminded, or maybe there's a sign-off sheet, hey, if there's bullying,
I'll tell you, well, I think we work really hard at addressing and eliminating any kind of bullying or undesired behavior. we are always looking for ways to improve what we currently have in place. Because while I think we're really good, I think there's a window for opportunity to be great is always there. So anything that you may have as an educator that you think would be effective for any GCCISD school, we would gladly welcome that input. And look at doing something, because I think that you have a point. If you see something every day when you come into the classroom, you're more apt to remember it. And so whether that's in the form of something that needs to go into the wall, that's why we were so pleased with the Crime Stoppers wanting to put those racks on the table, because kids would see that every day, and they would know that if they want to report it, that there's an outlet for them. So I think that's a great idea.
Don't some of them say, if you see something, say something?
Mm-hmm. That's what one of the campaigns of Crime Stoppers.
The thing that kind of concerns me the most, as a parent, is that by the time the kid comes tells you, it's because he can't handle it anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's what kind of puts the little bit of urgency and the little bit of fear in me as a dad, is that, there's kids out there that feel like by the time they say something, it's because they're about to explode, and that, unfortunately in the society we live in, we've seen kids that get bullied, the bullying, and then many times the victim doesn't have a way out. And then they do things that are very regrettable.
And unfortunately, I think that your kids are probably very blessed to be able to have you to go home and share that information with. But the reality is that we have a lot of students in our district that don't. That's why it goes back to that positive environment at the campus, that even if I don't have a guardian or a parent, that I've created that relationship, that we have created those relationships between our counselors and our kids, our teachers and our kids, that trust is there, that if I need help, I can go to my teacher and they're going to help me. And so that's why positive behavior, the PBIS is really important district-wide, is they have to know that even if, dad works 10 hours a day, mom works in Houston, your school, your campus, your administrator, your counselor is here for you. That's our job. That's our responsibilities. And so like I said, I think we're really good at doing what we do. I think that there's always room for improvement. I don't think that we're the epitome of perfection. I think that time changes, social media changes, and there's always an opportunity for us to get better at what we do.
I just have a couple of things. I know on Safe Schools is where they do the training for bullying, and it might be just beneficial because I know that teachers have to sign off on the things and they receive the code of, all of that stuff at the beginning of the year. But if they heard somebody tell them, maybe they would understand that they are responsible for reporting that.
And I'm very glad you mentioned that, because that kind of goes back to what Mr. Clem is saying, that the campus administrators have to sign off on their teachers going through that Safe School bullying video of misconceptions of, okay, you can't, because one of the worst things that you can do is have the aggressor and the victim in the same room. It's about that imbalance of power. And so you don't ever want to say, hey, hug it out. Hey, that's not the way it works. And so teachers, whether it's their first year in the classroom or their 34th year in the classroom, they need to know how bullying has evolved in the world that we live today.
And just realistically, the Safe School stuff's probably playing in the background while they're doing their lesson plans, or it's down on mute. You know what I'm saying? So say if it was in a meeting and it was directly addressed to them.
Participation
in
the training.
Yes.
And know that we did have an incident where we had to go back into the Safe Schools training pool, who had the training, and really just hold grown-ups accountable.
Right.
Say, you watched it on this day, so we know you know what it looks like.
Yeah.
And that's uncomfortable conversations, but it's about holding professionals and grown-ups accountable for the safety of students.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I'll definitely like that face-to-face thing.
And then I was just thinking, just training that we've been through. What are there programs that are getting kids involved in, just the positive environment at the school? I know there's Character Strong. That's a really good just kindness program. And then I know that you've done Safe School Ambassadors before in the district, and I know it's gone away, but just something similar. Is there anything similar that the kids are involved in that's teaching kindness?
It varies from campus to campus, one of the things that the PBIS model has the campuses do is identify based on the data what their area of weakness is or where they're needing more attention to. So if I'm running the data and I'm seeing most of my incidents happen in the cafeteria, then I'm going to use that data to drive where the needs are for that campus. And so if there's a lot of bus referrals, okay, so I need to work with our students on what bus expectations are. So it varies on the campus as to what their needs are based on the information that they're reporting, that they're seeing, that they're addressing daily. But on any given day, you can see anything from just character of the month that they have, just positive reinforcement through whether it be one class, whether it be a student organization. It just varies based on the campus.
I just have one more question about your bullying data here. Under where it says number of reports filed, is that number of reports filed by campus administrators that were then investigated? Okay, so I had asked before on 2 separate occasions about the online reporting. I know each campus has where parents can go in and report a bullying incident or series of incidents or something, and that's, I guess, anonymous or not. I've never used it. But where do those reports go and how do they get processed?
Okay.
And where can we see how many of those we're getting each year?
The anonymous reporting comes to my office. Some of it is filtered to, for example, kids can go in there just like parents and send inappropriate comments about their teachers or campus administrators.
You get
and even
prank.
yes,
You get prank emails.
Yes, from student. The most recently, I got one from a student who unfortunately was at High Point and had a couple of choice words for his principals, and he, sent that under the bullying report.
Well, I would think you would want to pay attention to that.
So we did, and so they come to me. I pull up in the system where they're currently enrolled, and then I send it to the campus administrator and the assistant principal. And so
originally I was told that those went directly to the campus principal, and then that was the question: where do they go from there, or how are they handled? So anything on any campus website page, anything that gets turned in there goes directly to you first, and then you meter it out?
At the individual campuses, and I'll have to make sure I give you the correct information because I don't want to misspeak. If they do it at the Gentry website campus,
where the little icon says report online bullying or online bullying report.
That may go straight to Ms. Holland. I know that I get anonymous reports as well.
You're shaking your head. It goes to the principal. Okay. I know you've said that before. That's why I was under the impression that they went there.
And then under the main website, those come to me because I get them. And sometimes, like I said, it could be anonymous, or sometimes parents want to say, hey, this is my email, this is my child, and this is what's happening. I've had them go under and say, hey, this is happening in this class.
And so that's kind of what I would like to know. I mean, how many of those are we receiving campus, across the whole district? I mean, if there are some that go straight to the campus principal and they're on the main website, they come to you, how many of those are coming in every year?
I can get that information to you, but I'll tell you out of that 122 investigations that we looked at, some of those came from the anonymous, because I could see as I'm pulling them up on Review 360 and getting the details on them, that some of them came in through the website, and some of them came in from Crime Stoppers. I had one that I looked at that that was made through Crime Stoppers that said, okay, somebody posted a picture of student A in an unflattering way, and kids were making fun of it. And that's all the information I had. And so that's something that the campus administrators looked into. Do we know, like I said, whose hashtag, whose Twitter account, whose Snap, to see if we could identify it. A lot of times they'll contact the individual social media providers, whether it be Facebook or Instagram, to see if they can give us that information on, whose account is this. We've been reported numerous occasions to Instagram or Snapchat with concerning behavior, as well as law enforcement has done the same, especially if it's something harmful or a threat in any form or fashion. So that's not difficult. I can get that information to you. The injunction relief for parents, That was something new in the last Senate Bill 179. It allowed the parents to seek injunctive relief from a court to stop or prevent cyberbullying. For example, it's summer. It's summer, and so if student A is constantly bothering student B, it's summer. What do those parents do? Where do they go? So they were provided this relief to where they could seek an injunctive relief from the parents of students who are under the age of 18. This doesn't really apply to school districts, but it could. If we had a student that, was constantly identified as a bully through different acts, then law enforcement could be brought in, and parents could be provided that relief as well. One of the things moving forward, we listen, I promise, and we take notes, and we also look at how we can improve. And so previous board meeting, it was mentioned that the Student Ambassador Program was successful. And so that's something that, like I said, Dr. Rimnick and I from Counseling and Wellness work very closely, and we're going to be looking at what the Student Ambassador Program actually is. I'll tell you, I'm not familiar with it, but I am very curious. We're going to evaluate the effectiveness of Oliveus, which is what our students use, and develop a district-wide committee to compile recommendations. Like I said, I don't live in Goose Creek, so the kids, the campuses, you are the voices that I get information from, and I welcome it at any point in time. But we do want to look at what recommendations are out there that we could implement, and that would be a greater relief to our campuses and our students and our parents. So, like I said, we're always looking for ways to improve the processes that we have in place.
I think the benefit of the district-wide committee that could transfer down to committees campus-specific would even be effective, building community within a campus. That's a whole part of a positive environment. If you have committees on campuses that are getting parents and students and teachers and administrators all involved together in being responsible for the health, mental discipline of the students on that campus, and it's more accountability for students who show poor choices when it comes to discipline and fall into program, fall into patterns of
undesired behavior.
Exactly what I was going to say.
We're right here, Ms. Smith, right here. I think it's important that parents and kids know that they have a voice, regardless of the age, regardless of the campus that they're zoned to, that they have a voice, and whatever they have to share or say means something, and that we're listening, whether it's the campus administrator, the counselor, or anyone in this building, that we're here to serve. And so we want to make sure to empower them that they have a voice, regardless of the situation they may be in.
Ms. De La Cruz, I have one more comment. First of all, I appreciate the update. I really do. I think it's an incident that is, as we see, we've heard even the school shootings. Unfortunately, sometimes they're the end result of bullying, and it's something that's very serious in our society right now. Because of social media. But one of the things that I think I've heard at least three of us, and I'm sure it's not just three of us, request is, or going towards a committee, some sort of committee, and I think the implementation of campus-wide committees are extremely important. I think also at some point we need to have something a little bit more district-wide, especially if we start to see patterns. I think a year or two ago we even saw little clowns popping up everywhere. Well, what are they? There was one in Miss Dr. O'Brien's backyard, right? Dr. O'Brien, a little clown out there. Anyway, you see like these waves of little clowns in the parks.
The clowns?
Clowns.
Oh, like
right. There was one
at
what's the name of the Holloway?
That just happened at Halloween in Highlands. I don't know about y'all.
That's Highlands. Sorry, Baytown, we're not at that point yet, but anyway, well, what I'm saying is that sometimes things happen in waves, and I think that having a district-wide committee would probably be, a good idea as well. What I wanted to ask, or what I wanted to request, that we get an update when you do form a committee, and when y'all have meetings, it could be in our report,
Okay.
We had a meeting, this was discussed, just something, a quick blurb. And also, I'd also like to have maybe next summer, have an update on what was accomplished within the committee.
Okay.
And what, like, for example, if we were able to, when we implement the Safe Schools and the Ambassadors Program, when we implement that program, how that worked out this year and what things need to change, what things worked out well. I'd like to have an update at a workshop next year as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time.
Well, one more point of information, if I may. You mentioned that victims must be offered the opportunity to reassign campus if they choose.
Transfer, yes.
Right, transfer. Does the district have a right to reassign the aggressor to another campus?
If the bullying is pervasive enough, then yes.
So Mr. Poppy just pulled that policy up and read it, and coincidentally it says that it would be handled similar to a grievance, where that information is presented to the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees authorizes that relocation, reassignment. So that administration isn't just indiscriminately moving kids across the campus.
Okay.
Most of the ones that were referred to moving were at the parents' request, not at any recommendation on our part. But the aggressor can be relocated with board consent of administration's recommendation.
Who would initiate that? Campus or?
The campus administrators would know to make that recommendation.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Questions? You have a break, my
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dela Cruz.
I have a request to move closed session up to now. If anybody would like to make a motion.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it. We got,
Discussion.
everybody seconded.
Motion for Mr. Clem, seconded by Ms. Wood. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-4, 0 against, 1 absent. The board will now recess into closed session pursuant to the following section of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code Section 551, 071, 072, 073, 074, 075, 076, 082, 083, 084, and 087. No action will be taken while the board is in closed session.
Ms. Grimes and Dr. Wyatt, if y'all could join me.
Time is now 8:51. The board will reconvene to open session. Dr. O'Brien.
All right, this time administration recommends under 7A, consideration of 2019-2020 compensation plan and hiring schedule for teachers, librarians, and nurses. Option B1.
I move that we accept option B1 as the hiring schedule.
I second.
I have a motion by Mr. Clem, second by Mr. Carter. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Against? Abstain? Motion passes 5-4, 0 against, 1 abstention.
Administration recommends approval of action item B, consideration and approve adoption of the 2019-20 proposed budgets for the general fund, debt service, and school nutrition funds.
I move to approve.
I second.
I have a motion by Mr. Poppy, second by Mr. Clam. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-4, 0 against.
Administration recommends action item C, consideration of approval of resolution nominating candidate for position to the Board of Directors of the Harris County Appraisal District.
I'll move for approval.
I second.
Toss up.
Recommendation by Ms. Woods, second by Ms. Guy. Any discussion? All four, please raise your right hand. All against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 5-4, 0 against, 1 abstention.
Administration recommends action item D, consideration of consent agenda, donation from ExxonMobil, 2, resolution expressing intent to finance expenditures to be incurred from local funds with the intention of a future reimbursement from bond funds for conceptual design of GCC ISD Education Service Center Phase 1, construction of Stewart Career Tech High School Phase 3, and site improvement construction of Hopper Primary School and Gentry Junior School. 3, agreement between Goose Creek CISD and Adrian Ware, LSSP. Number 4, budget amendments.
Would anybody like to pull anything? Okay.
I move we approve consent agenda items 1 through 4.
I second.
I have a motion by Mr. Clem, second by Mr. Poppy to approve all consent agenda, items D1 through 4. Any discussion? All 4, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-4, 0 against.
Then administration would recommend approval of elections and resignations as presented.
Move for approval.
Having a motion by Ms. Woods, second by Ms. Guy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
Hold on, one discussion. I meant to say resignations and retirement.
Elections, resignations, and retirements?
Yes.
As presented.
As presented.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
A motion by Ms. Woods, second by Ms. Guy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-4, 0 against.
Administration then recommends the approval of science instructional specialist Stephanie DeLoss.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Clem, second by Mr. Poppy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-4, 0 against.
Administration recommends approval of student support administrator at Days of Isle Elementary, Lacey Gordon.
I'll move for approval.
A second.
Motion by Ms. Woods, second by Mr. Carter. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-4, 0 against.
Administration recommends for assistant principal at Days of Isle Elementary, Robin Wright.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Clem, second by Ms. Guy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 6-4, 0 against.
At this time, administration would like to withdraw consideration item I, 7I, for future consideration. That concludes administration's recommendations.
I move we adjourn.
A second.
We skipped over G, future board agenda items, board training, board meetings.
I rescind my motion.
Good,
Any future board agenda items?
I can tell you that administration will be putting together a meeting or a team for consideration for the presentation as presented tonight.
Will that for the bullying?
Yes.
Will we have community as well on the committee?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and then board meetings, y'all sent out a list of
That can be put,
tentative.
yeah, I think that's to be put on a future board agenda item.
What was the July meeting date?
July
Or
1st.
July 1st.
July 1st, is that
They're just-
Monday?
Yes.
There needs to be some adjustment for September. It's on Labor Day, the way,
The
and
way
then
it was
just look
put
at
out, the
that.
16th
September.
of September?
The 9th, and it would,
Oh,
Oh,
so
September
it's put on
2nd.
for the 2nd, but we have Labor Day.
the 2nd is Labor Day?
Yes.
Okay.
Just look at that.
You want to put that on for next meeting, for July 1st?
So it would likely be the following Monday, which would be the 9th.
Right.
So we'll make that adjustment now.
For 9/9, and then the subsequent meeting on 9/16.
Dr. Bryan,
Yes.
do you want to move that one for the 23rd? Or keep it on the 16th?
Be careful because we have conference. What is it?
Yeah, but that ends on the 28th.
It's the 20th to the 22nd.
Okay, so
The
you want to
conference
meet
is.
on Monday after you come back, because that is a weekend deal. It's a return on Sunday as opposed to,
So it's possible we may need to move September to a one meeting, that'd be on the 9th.
You want to do it on the 16th, the middle of the month?
That sounds good.
September
If it's good with the
16th
board,
will
it's
be
good
a
with us.
solo September. What's the first day of school?
August 13th.
June something.
So we meet on the, so we meet on the 12th, school starts on the 13th
What?
of August.
We meet on the 5th.
I have August 12th on here.
We're looking at an email.
We got an email from,
Where? Oh,
With the
you want
There's
a
a young
conference?
man with a question.
Yes, Mr. Chapa.
In accordance with our policy, on board meetings, it says that we will have our board policy on the first Monday of each month, so we will probably need to look at our policy and revising that.
At the July
because
1st
our
meeting.
board policy says a meeting on the first Monday, is that what you just said? That's our board,
Yeah,
current board policy.
Yes.
We talked about we would have to.
So we would need to look at our
Correct.
policy, if we're gonna be having 2 per month, some of the months.
Yeah, we're just looking at adjusting. That way you know what it is so you can update the policy and bring it to us for
We can do
approval.
that.
Yes.
Because like Augustine said, August 5th would be our first meeting in August, but we have down here suggested August 12th.
Why did we change that?
I'm going somewhere to a conference.
Okay.
August 5th.
Well, we could have a lot of fun.
So
I can have a designee.
technically, right now, our meeting is August 5th, and we'll have to change it to the 12th.
We can change that right now as well.
Okay. All right, so
Somebody send me an email.
it is, well, okay.
Oh, yeah.
It just got too complicated.
So we're all
don't
here
know.
July 1st.
I'm
We will
done.
have updated proposal for the board's adoption, including policy on July 1st.
All right, July 1st.
And you'll have the date set so we can vote July 1st for August and September meetings.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you.
And we have, for the superintendent's report that evening, I believe we have a presentation by Human Resources outlining our hiring practices over the last few years, as requested by Mr. Sampson.
Have any trainings? We just had training. Saw everybody. Good to see you.
We're all trained up.
Hang out with everybody.
We will be having a team of 8 training in September likely.
Good.
We'll discuss further as we get closer.
That could be our second meeting.
It could be.
In September, but we also have conference in Dallas.
Yeah.
September, you said that was 21 and 22?
Okay. Well, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn again?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second. I have a motion by Mr. Cotter, second by Ms. Woods. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, motion passes. Y'all have a wonderful night at 9:02 p.m.
2 minutes over.